what problem are you solving, and quickly how. Like, what's the difference in what you're doing? Break it down clearly and don't run an infinite competitive analysis. So you need that human channel and you need your brand channels.
How should founders approach a competitive analysis? How do you look at the marketplace and then identify where you're different?
I think this ties into some of those other pieces when we're thinking about go to market, and a lot of the steps that we look at there. I would look at folks that are projects that are really trying to solve a similar problem. I would look at projects that are doing a taking a slightly different approach to the same problem. And by that, I mean, there's groups that are going to be trying to do it potentially exactly the way that you're trying to do it. And then there's going to be projects and groups that are trying to do it, but with a little bit of twist. And then I would look at any sort of larger, say in the L1 space, very well established, L1s, if we're looking at like Bitcoin and Ethereum versus some of these other different types of projects and understanding what's working well for them. This is where some of those tools can also come in handy depending on how much you want to invest or if you have someone that has access to something like that, where you can determine a little bit more around share of voice for each of those competitors and projects. And that has been really helpful when I've done these types of assessments in the past. But I do think it really comes down to also whether it's one of those SWOT analyses, like I mentioned, or just clearly defining relative to each of those competitors how you are doing something a little bit different and
hmm
how you're going to reach the audience that they already have and convert them, and really defining that clearly on paper and to yourself before moving forward too much, because or else I think that you really are going to miss a lot of gaps when it comes to positioning yourself in the best possible
hmm
way, and you're potentially doing something that is already has like a fully saturated kind of done and done community and audience. That's not to say that trying isn't, is a bad thing, but I do think breaking it down in that way and having that kind of honesty with yourself before moving forward is really, really important. I do think this is another way where you can kind of start digging through and identifying, since a lot of these conversations also happen at these larger Web3 events, going
hmm
through and understanding who are the projects that are also consistently listed as the speakers, who's spending money to get out there, and really
Mm.
wrapping that into your analysis is really important. Because if you see that, hey, it's a Nears out there or even like a Solana, whoever you're sort of looking at, making sure that you understand how they're addressing this type of audience and what type of really budget and everything that they're spending to be there is an important part of the overall analysis. So, lastly, I would just make sure that this is an important step and just break it down clearly and don't run an infinite competitive analysis, because I've seen that
hmm
it's easy to get swept up because there's a lot of overlap, most likely with a lot of different projects. Don't need to include every single possible one that you can think of. And in a perfect world, we could, but realistically, by the time you're done doing all of that, an opportunity might have passed. So I just recommend
hmm
doing all of this with a little bit of speed and efficiency in mind and not getting too mired down. Just think of it as like quick, precise, understanding exactly the core pieces that you need to when it comes to this, and how these other projects are relating to your audience that you're after, and then assessing from there.
So once you've established that, what are the key parts of a good value proposition? What are the key components? I always like our friend Ross talks about looking at what will be possible when for the user. What's your main sort of key thing you're looking for in a value proposition?
Yeah, I really like that too. The what is possible when approach I think is fantastic, and really just starting with what are you, I mean, honestly, it's kind of that, just phrased slightly differently. Like, what are you doing for the audience and how, without getting too mired in the details. So,
hmm
what problem are you solving, and quickly how? Like, what's the difference in what you're doing? Is it that you're solving for a scalability challenge and you're using auto scaling, or depending on the audience, you have to tweak things a little bit. But I say, just really keep it very, very simple at that level and easy to articulate. Just like, I think you said your friend Ross mentioned, I think hit the nail on the head there.
So you agree then that it should be less about kind of the specific product or service that you have and what your users will be able to do once they're using your product.
Exactly. It's what you can do with it. Like what, again, kind of the theme of our conversation, what value is it providing? So
Mm-hmm.
just like all of your marketing and content and all of that should be providing value, focus on a product level with the value that it is actually providing to your key audience and can work from there.
Okay, so steaming rolling through the back end of this section. Once you've got that in, sort of laid out, and you know, okay, this is the value that I'm bringing. What are the marketing channels that you think are the most effective in Web3? How should you prioritize them? And are there any that you should just avoid?
Yeah, I think that Discord is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just sort of go through. So we have those social channels, we're like thinking Discord, you're thinking like Twitter, X. There's lots of new, I feel like channels popping up all the time, but I find that sometimes teams and founders can get stretched a little too thin when you try to saturate every single channel you can think of at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Another channel that I think is kind of sneakily impactful at times is LinkedIn, depending on your project. And then do not underestimate like YouTube and your blog. So ideally, all of these connect together. So what I would say, and also a personal channel, I never want to forget that for the founder or someone on the team. So you need
Yeah.
that human channel and you need your brand channels.
Yeah. People buy from people. Absolutely.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
don't forget that, as a founder, as a founding team member, whoever you are in the specific project, it is people want to hear from the founder. So it should
Yeah.
really be a really fantastic interaction between all of the different core channels. And that means, say you draft a blog post on the current state of decentralization, in Web3. I'm not saying that you should write that specific one. It might be a little dry, but just as an example. Um, and then you have a quick video clip that's a Q&A of you and someone from the community talking about the state of decentralization. And then on X or Twitter, you have little clips of the video, you have some pieces from the blog, it all feeds together. And this would be, say, for a project that's focused to some degree, of course, on decentralization. And then you as a founder or team member would post your own thoughts or opinions and then be reposted on, Twitter, X by the main brand account. And that way you're pushing forward a unified perspective on something that is relevant to the industry. So it's really, to me, not even as much the specific channels, although they are important. It's how you can weave them together into something that feels cohesive across a few different ways that people attain and digest information. And by that, I mean blog, long form, YouTube video, and then whatever social channel, which is usually quick bites and repurposed pieces. And then, of course, that human element where it's an actual person on the team posting and commenting that then can be shared on the broader channel. And those sorts of connections are what I've seen the most success from when it comes to those marketing channel usage. Because a lot of times
I'd
we just
add,
focus on one or another.
yeah, I'd add, make sure that person, whoever you choose to be the face of your business, is with your business for the long term.
Yes, that
make
is
sure
important.
That they stay around.
Yeah, it's helpful if that person is the founder because
Yeah.
they will be around usually. But that's a really good point.